all of the sessions, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Really exciting. I can't wait to see the list of who's joined for all 5 sessions. But let me start with a little intro. This is our Champ Camp 2.0 team, and we like to thank all of the people that made this program possible. First, the NISCA Executive Board, which advocates for all school counselors in New York at the state level and works tirelessly to develop materials to help school counselors and directors in the field. And second, previous executive board members who continue to work on behalf of the profession, sharing their expertise. And I'm so honored to be working with these guys. Our Champ Camp 2.0 team, comprised of current and former NISCA board members, all working in the field as school counselors, directors, and counselor educators. We put our heads together and drew from our work experience to bring this program to you. Little history: the first Champ Camp was developed to inform school counselors of and support implementation of the revised state ed regulation on comprehensive school counseling program requirements. Many years of work went into development of this regulation to ensure it reflected our professional standards as established by the American School Counselor Association. The state ed regulation guidance document provided additional information on what the regulation means and answered many of the questions that came to state ed's attention during the long regulation adoption process. All these materials, as well as additional ones NISCA developed to continue this process of interpreting and informing, are available on the NISCA website under professional development. In the summer of 2018, a team of NISCA trainers traveled to 4 locations in New York State. Remember back then when we did these things in person? To provide a full day training on the new regulation. It was intensive and intense. Through this training opportunity, NISCA was able to provide supportive materials, answer questions from the field, and assist schools with the important process of evaluating and often redesigning their counseling program. And there was immediate demand for additional programs. Now, it's important to mention that the regulation revision is based on ASCA. The national model is now in its 4th edition. And that's what those who have attended all 5 sessions will get a copy of. We can't overstate the importance of being familiar and knowledgeable of the 4 ASCA model components: define, manage, deliver, and assess your program. These form the core of your program development. ASCA also provides our student standards and our professional standards and competencies. Champ Camp 2.0, therefore, picks up where the first Champ Camp left off. The programs in Champ Camp were designed to support full implementation of the regulation requirements. It was made possible through the generous funding of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. One of the intentions of the foundation is to provide professional development free of charge to school counselors across New York State. And to live up to this intention, we are recording today's program and providing it to NISCA members and non-members through NISCA's YouTube channel and on our website. But before we begin, I would like you to consider membership in NISCA. Even though you're able to access this program and others for free, your membership dues help support all of our activities, especially advocacy at the state level. If you're not already a member, please consider joining NISCA. We are working to support funding for schools to reduce the counselor-student ratio, get more elementary school counselors in elementary buildings, and to provide more trainings like this one. We need to inform principals on how better ratios and full implementation of the regulation actually support their school's goals. We hope you will join with us, because with greater numbers, our voice will be heard. Throughout the program, know that the handouts that we reference and from the previous programs are all housed at nisca.org/champcamp2. We'll share links through the chat box as needed through the session. We encourage you to participate with questions in the chat box. And when we pause for questioning, we have several polls, and we'll show you how to do that. So your participation is paramount. We need you right in here with us. So Welcome to our final culminating Champ Camp program, focusing on the power of access. We're going to be referencing previous programs and sharing about the school programs that we individually work in. We will be the voices from the field today. Our program goals is to cover 4 things. What is access and equity? What's the role of the school counselor? How do we fit into the bigger picture? And how does professional development fit into this? We'll be referencing the social emotional learning, our first program, making your efforts count. How does your flow chart flow, and advisory working for you? These were the previous Champ Camp programs that'll be referenced during today's program. Let's start with access and equity. The data is staggering. Looking at 2016-17 info, Latino, Black, and American Indian students in New York public schools were underrepresented in a wide range of gatekeeper courses that prepare students for advanced work and advanced courses. Courses like Algebra 1, Earth Science, Calculus, Physics, Computer Science, Advanced Foreign Language, Music, AP, and IB. The data is staggering. Just looking at the power of being chosen for the advanced math program leads to this data. The chance of being enrolled in an advanced math class in grade 9 is 22% higher for students who are not low income compared to their peers who are low income and also proficient. The chance of being enrolled in advanced math is 16% higher for white students compared to their Black peers who are also proficient. It's 20% higher for white students compared to their Latinx peers who are proficient. It's 32% higher for permanently housed students compared to those in temporary housing who are also proficient. It's 110% higher for general ed students compared to their peers who are students with disabilities who are also proficient. It's 241% higher for students who are not English language learners compared to their ELL peers who are also proficient. This data was compiled by the New York Education Coalition, and I've put it in the Google Drive program folder where we put all of the handouts. This is a familiar graphic, I hope, of what equity looks like. I was actually disheartened to see the ways this important message has been subverted on the internet with versions I would not want to broadcast that shows the depth of inequitable beliefs and attitudes in our state and nation. Fortunately, in our profession, we have standards that drive our professional activity and hopefully beliefs. Our ASCA ethical standards say very clearly that school counselors are advocates, leaders, collaborators, and consultants who create systemic change by providing equitable educational access and success, by connecting school counseling program to the district's mission and improvement plans. We demonstrate our belief that all students have the ability to learn by advocating for an education system that provides optimal learning environments for all students. ASCA's ethical standards also say we need to provide students with a comprehensive school counseling program that ensures equitable academic, career, and social emotional development opportunities for all students. That we review school and student data to assess needs, including but not limited to data on disparities that may exist, and use data to determine needed interventions, which are then delivered to help close the gaps. ASCA has a position statement on equity for all students. And again, we provided this in the notes. And NISCA has also recently developed one that uses very similar language. And if you look at these closely, I'm having a little trouble here, we go. You look at these closely, the info in it can be pulled into 4 areas. And these are action areas. A, the first action, identify gaps with data. This is what we need to be doing. Achievement data, behavior, attendance, services, supplies, opportunities. Isn't that interesting how my A, B, C's suddenly became AAA? I just saw that that should be A, B, and C. The second action, advocate for students. Looking for underrepresented groups, participating in the development of or opposition to school policies, providing access to rigorous courses and pathways, and informing school staff as needed. And what should be C, develop or revise your program activities to address these gaps, address over or underrepresentation, create a comfortable, welcoming environment, collaborate with families and be a liaison. And then finally, the fourth area, professional development, understand your students' culture and understand your diverse multicultural work setting. These 4 areas are going to form the structure of a lot of our program today, and how we share with you some examples from the field of how we've put this into action. So looking at our second goal, let's talk about how a school counselor fulfills the actions that were just laid out in the ASCA and mission position statements. Because this is what we're charged to do. And I'm going to, there we go. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to join in on here. And I think Lisa.
Yes. This slide is a throwback to why social and emotional learning. And it's such a great place for us to start. I know my heart hurts listening to Gloria explain the statistics and what disparity there is out there. And it hurts me that we are a world on fire right now. And it can be overwhelming to think we have to create systemic change and we have to create opportunities and we have to look for disparities. There's so much that you just heard. Where do we start? And I want to say this: we start small and grow big. This program today is designed to give you information, not to overwhelm you, to encourage you, to inspire you. We are going to outline ways that you can pick up and be an advocate to create change. We start small and we go big.
So let's hear some stories from the field, starting with the first action area, identifying gaps with data. And I think, Lisa, we'll go right back to you.
Yeah. So before we begin and go into our experiences, I am so proud to be part of Champ Camp, and we all sit from different views. We have rural, suburban, and city. Wherever you are, it's important to believe you have the power to make change. When we think about poverty, often we link it automatically to lack of money, but there's poverty in different ways. We're going to talk about poverty of opportunity. You can be from a wealthy school and kids still lacking in certain opportunities. So we are presenting our ideas in a way that hopefully everyone across New York State, no matter who you represent, you will take away ideas and inspiration. So we're going to move on to our examples of identifying gaps with data, and I'm going to start. The data that I'm going to talk about is taking a hard look at report cards. And not only do I look at all the report cards, I focus in on my students who have IEPs and 504s. And then I also look for patterns among teachers. Are my teachers appropriately using modifications and using the IEP and the 504 plan to fairly grade students? And once I saw a grade, it just stuck out. Why did this child fail this course? They love it and they are doing well in it. And all of a sudden there was a failing grade. I went to the teacher and she explained that the student failed a project that that was graded heavily in the quarter grade. So I talked about the 504 plan. Were the directions clarified? were they given extended time? And when the teacher kind of didn't understand, I was able to go to bat for this student and to have that student work again on that project and to really change that grade. May seem like a small thing in the way of an elementary child, but it is a big victory to make sure we are advocating for all kids. Christy?
Here I am jumping in, right? So one of the things in terms of data for me that I'd like to share is that, especially on the secondary level, there's tons of data. So we have the city data, we have the state data. I'm from New York City. So you have the report cards, and then you have the quality reviews. You have all this information that kind of comes through, and then, you know, everyone has information to share. And then we keep our own data, right? Because that's what's close to us. And we need to have something that's tangible that we can track. So being mindful of that and having your own data and knowing how to interpret data is really important. And one of the things that we talked about in terms of like, are we doing college access for all? And what about careers? And there, you know, for a long time, there was a huge push of just like college readiness, college readiness, college readiness. And the language seemed a little bit scary for some of our students. They're like, I have a plan and it doesn't include college right now. And the data showed me in terms of like surveys and feedback that, you know, we weren't really engaging these young people because the conversations weren't where we needed them to be. And then providing surveys to our students and getting feedback from them and information that they shared with their teachers, we knew that we needed to change our program to college and career readiness. And we needed to change the language so that students felt like, all right, like college is an option for you. We want to make sure that we embed that in you. It is an option. But if you want to go the career route, you already have friends and family that have businesses and you know what you want to do. We have opportunities for you. And that really allowed us, one, for the students to feel heard, because then we started changing things around, but also to all be on the same page. Our students, we were all talking the same language.
And I'll pick up right where Christy left off. From the district perspective, data is absolutely everywhere. But are you collecting data that supports your effort? Your outcome data is really important to your program. So when I think about the data that comes from your district school report card, your regional survey data, your building level data in regards to course placement, discipline, and attendance. So we want to make sure that you're in the know of the policies that are in your district that prevent your students or that are barriers to your students being able to take honors courses or AP courses or college level courses. And when you look at your district report card, you can see, oh, the percentage of special education students that were capable, but were never admitted to an honors course or an AP course. In the same regard, our students who might be placed in a track early on in seventh and eighth grade that prevents them from taking courses early on. And that certainly has happened in districts that I've worked with. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all of our data, especially those that are at the state level.
And I just want to add, and this kind of like just came to me when I ran programs working in elementary schools, and we did literacy-based after-school programming, and we noticed that, you know, behavior issues were coming up, and when we looked at our data in terms of trying to figure out, okay, what's going on with these young people, these little guys and girls, and just, you know, figuring it out. And one of the things that we noticed is that some of them were in the wrong reading groups. You know, like we just were giving them these activities in, you know, they were in first grade or second grade when really they needed to be hanging out with the third and fourth graders because they were at that level. And that came about through behavioral data, right? And then targeting these young people. So just be mindful of all of that there's so many different kinds of data. It doesn't have to be state and very specific, but just simple things like noticing behavioral data and trying to pinpoint where that might be coming from. And once we move some of our young people around and we change their groups around, it made a huge difference in their experience.
Well, we'd like to hear what gaps you have been able to identify in your job, in your school. If you've done this before with us, you know, you can do this on your phone, texting. The message is Christy LeBron 794, and you're texting it to the number 22333. And once in, you will be able to add your answer.
I'm getting on my phone so that I can. add my
Yeah,
phone.
me too. 22333. Stu LeBron 794.
I always open up the HTTPS app only because it just makes it easier and it just flows for me. So just food for thought for you all.
No, I like it right in my message thing.
People can also put in the chat too. What gaps have you found? Honors courses. I love that. Courses, education, SEL, education courses, IEP, 504s. You know, IEPs and the 504s, there's a lot of data to look within that. Attendance. For me, attendance is so important because you have to be there to learn.
Yeah.
You know, data of keeping track of interventions is also so important, especially on an individual basis. Relationship building, I love that. Oh, technology.
That was me.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
That's awesome.
Participation points, I love that, Dawn. Language, access.
Yes.
Career and technical education, that's a good one. Post-secondary data, that is a really, really good point, because how many of us actually track data after our students leave our
Yep.
building?
And there's a big disparity again on the students who hang in there for 4 years. Again, there is a color divide. And that's an important piece to know and to look at as you're looking at your students. Recognizing bright spot. All right, Michelle. Post-secondary data, yep, SEL.
Awesome. Thank you for your participation.
Yeah, safety's a great one. What a great word.
Yes.
Math. You know, there's a lot of focus on ELA in elementary school, but let's not ever forget math as well.
Okay, I'm going to lock the responses here. And if you already typed it in, it will show up eventually. And let's see if I can get us back. I can never get out of this.
You should be able to go
Here we go.
wide, right? There we go.
I'm getting better. It's only the 5th program. I'll get it now. Our second action area is advocating for students, which is looking for underrepresented groups, participating in the development of or opposition to school policies, providing access to rigorous courses and pathways, informing school staff. And let's hear from the field for examples on this action area.
How important it is to advocate for students. And Christy touched on this a little while ago with her little first graders who needed to be in the 3rd grade group. I had a foster child who I spent tons and tons of time with because she was not only energetic, she was challenging all the school rules, a little bit oppositional, and a force to be reckoned with as she was choosing not to be the student who she was really capable of being. with my conversations, I innately knew that she was so intelligent and so smart. And I was racking my brains about how I'm going to help this smart girl. And I went to my principal and I said, I think she needs to be in our talented and gifted program. And he said, are you insane? There's a behavior component to this. And I said, I will take responsibility of the behavior. And he said, if you can convince the teacher, then it's a go. So we provided her the test. She was capable, as I knew she would be. And I went to the teacher, who gave me glaring looks like I was an insane person. But as I explained that this child needs this and I will back her up and I will back you up, she went into the program and was very successful. And she began embracing the school rules, which was a fabulous go for her. And for me, this opened a door, because once the teacher and I worked together, we were able to then get students who were very bright, but maybe had focusing issues. And then we were able to get other students who were capable and should be there, but with perhaps a support for anxiety. With students getting the support they needed, these children were able to be challenged with rigorous course, which is what we need to do.
And one of my many examples, and I'll probably share more than one because I like to talk a lot, but really this one kind of hit home for me when we had, well, let me preface it by saying that although I want to be in the room when decisions are made and I want to sit at this table, there's not enough of me to go around, right? So I can't sit at every table. And conversations were happening that I wasn't privy to because they needed to happen. And I don't necessarily sit in the E&L team and, chime in on how they're spending their money and providing resources. But it did hit home for me when they decided to pull students out of my college classes, or not my college classes, of college classes, because the students tested needing additional E&L support. And that was a huge problem for me, because if the student is sitting in a college class, on our campus, going to get college credit and is doing well in the class, that would not be the class to pull this student out of. In fact, the student doesn't really need the additional E&L support, and they necessarily weren't mandated for it in that particular, capacity. So it allowed me to now be a part of this conversation. And when students are being pulled out and programs are being changed, it kind of runs through our table, the school counseling table, so that way we're having the conversation like, no, this student is doing well. This student is super successful, averaging an A in a college class. Let's pull them out of something or push into the college class if we want to provide them additional support. So let's be mindful of our young people. Let's be mindful of where their strengths are. And also when program changes are happening and students are being pulled for additional services, let's also be mindful of where that's happening, because sometimes it's a detriment to the young person. And this would have been, had I not caught it and had the conversation not been had, after the fact, the student would have missed out on 3 college credits. And that would have been super unfortunate. And if they don't get into your program, if they can't do the college class on your campus, look for other avenues where maybe they absolutely have to get this E&L support, but they can take a college class somewhere else because we know that they're capable of doing that. So that's one of my examples.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in and say that was the category, that was the data that was 241% higher for students who are not English language learners compared to their ELL peers when they are proficient. So that is a real critical area when you look at the data.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And from a district perspective, I'm always looking at policies that prevent groups of students in general, from having access to those rigorous college courses, or any course, quite honestly. Any policy that you have in your school that limits and puts barriers up for students not to have the opportunity to try should be a problem in your eyes, right? Because it is about students being exposed to all types of learning and allowing them the opportunity to do so at any level. So an open policy around students being enrolled in honors or college level courses. Not letting that AP score get in the way of a student who really just wants to try. So those are things that I want you to truly be thinking about, those GPA standards that are put in place for whatever reason, but understanding the why around those policies and then beginning to advocate for students for change and keeping track of the students that you were able to get into that course and how successful they were to help the next group of students that are coming in. So just adding a little bit of that data piece into it. But definitely from Gloria's statistics, we know that underrepresented groups of students are not being allowed access to rigorous courses.
So let's hear from you guys again. How have you been able to advocate for students? And these show up best with limited words, so try to give the topic or category or data point or whoever you can describe ways that, because we know what's going on, we know you're all working at it. We just need more, but we'd like to see your ideas. I think this is our last poll for a while too. Oh, people are thinking. Here we go. Oh, overage students. Interesting.
Restorative conversations instead of suspensions. If I could hug you, Orphelina, I am like embracing you right now. We have to have those conversations about how we discipline students and what kind of discipline, and is it really, do they need the discipline more than being taught a skill? Oh, credit recovery.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for telling us the ones that are coming up in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, accommodations on IEPs.
Love
Nice.
that.
Yeah.
That's why we're in those meetings.
Ooh.
And taking the right courses is so key. And I know in my district, they look and look and look, where is this strength within this child and how can we challenge them? Translation access, Jennifer, that is so important.
Oh, nice.
Credit recovery. Oh, I love that, Erin. Using students' preferred names, no matter what their identity. That is so wonderful. And that would be so important.
Yeah, I think it's worthy of mention, you know, this idea of advocating for policy changes. We're not supporting a policy that you have found discriminates. And, you know, transgender is certainly one of those areas where some schools are just not quite caught up, and it can be very contentious. It can be a difficult battle to fight, but without us fighting it, there's some kids are just really, really lost.
Yes. And we have to be strong. We have to be strong when others are not. And we have to show our students that we are willing to stand up for what's right.
Yeah.
Fighting for opportunities within the school, involving all stakeholders.
Yeah.
Mediation. And sometimes mediation between students and teachers. Sometimes there's some hard-headedness that goes on, and it's important to be the voice in the middle that stands for the student.
All right, I'm going to lock these responses.
Love restorative justice.
Restorative justice, I love that.
Yeah.
Practices, absolutely. We have to figure things out.
All right. Our third of the 4 action areas is developing or revising your program activities. So you identify gaps, you advocate for students, and now let's bring it on home with looking at our program. How can we address over or underrepresentation right within the program activities that we develop? How can we create a comfortable, welcoming environment for students and parents through our program activities? And making sure we're collaborating with families and being a liaison. So let's, one more time, let's hear from each level some examples.
So as an elementary counselor, as any counselor, we speak to teachers a lot during the day. They walk in our door and say, hey, this kid is not focusing. They're not doing what they should be doing. And I've spent time developing behavior plans with teachers, talking about different strategies they can use. But like Christy was talking about before, that data that you keep, I've had so many parent meeting or teacher meetings about the same subject. I went to my principal and I said, I'm doing a lot of work on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, kids who aren't focusing. Can I go to a training to become more skilled myself and then do a turnkey training for the teachers? And this was a huge change in the program. And my heart was beating the first time I stood in front of my faculty, yet they were so appreciative of the information that I had to share. My relationship with my teachers grew, and the pattern and the change in the program was my doing more than one PD. From attention deficit disorder, I did oppositional defiant disorder. During a stressful time with state testing, I did professional development on how we ourselves can stay at peace and how we can handle our stress. And then it also turned into, and it is going toward, trauma-informed practices. As we have been moving through this year with COVID, I have been presenting to my staff who would like to come. It's not mandatory, but I do see all my friends. And it is a way for us as a school to all speak the same language and to be all on the same page when we are helping and advocating for kids. It also gives me an opportunity to set a line and a bar. This is what we're expecting all teachers to do. This is where we need to be, and I'm going to help you get there. So my everyday talk with teachers turned into professional development for my school.
And then for me, again, with my secondary examples, and bringing that back to our English language learners or new learners of the language, we discovered through data and conversations with our students that many of our families were not showing up to our parent-teacher conferences. And because they weren't feeling supported, they weren't understanding what the teachers were saying. And we put in a huge effort to provide translation services for them and ensure that they were being invited in their language. So it wasn't only, for a long time, our stuff was just going out in 3 languages. It was going out in English, in Spanish, and in Bengali. And then we knew that we had families from Africa. We had families that spoke Mandarin and different dialects also of from different places of South America. And we made those connections with our families and started inviting them in their language so that they felt like, oh, they're going to come and they're going to hear in their language and we're able to translate. Oftentimes they have their siblings or their children translating for them. And that, that can be a little bit gray, but we wanted to make sure that we provided that. Another thing that we did is some of our workshops, our parent workshops, were pre-recorded, like the PowerPoints with the voiceover in the language, so that family can go into a breakout room with someone else and listen to the PowerPoint in that language, so that way they felt connected and they didn't feel like they weren't a part of the process. It is putting your best foot forward, and it does take some time, some planning, and some extra work. But if you set your mind to it and you set some goals and you gather a team together, you can make it work. And we have people who enjoy doing that for our families. But we knew that was a huge need, and we had to revise the way that we did things to be able to accommodate them.
That's so fantastic, Christy. So from the district level, thinking about your comprehensive program, is it diverse and culturally responsive and relevant for all of your populations? So Christy, when you're saying that those after school and parent evenings, and by including all of your stakeholders in that, you're creating that welcome environment, which in fact is revising your program to meet the needs of all of your students. For me, are we intentionally looking at how and what we do to meet all of our stakeholders, right? Every child, every teacher, every parent, every caregiver in our district. Some of the ways that we can be doing that is we actually took a look at our clubs and extracurricular activities, because are we making sure that everyone felt included, right? And so we said, okay, these are some of the programs that from the school counseling perspective that we offer, things like SEL groups and things like girls group or leadership groups. Were we making sure that we were inclusive to everyone and that everyone had the opportunity and understood it through translation, through our newsletters, through some of those types of activities to make sure that we were reaching every person, every person.
I was not precise before. There was another poll.
I didn't want to interject. I'm like, okay, they'll get to it.
Yes, that's okay. Well, we want to hear how you've revised your program to address a gap. What's something that you've done, changed, added to address a gap that you've noticed?
I sent one in.
Me too.
There is a slight delay, I find. Should be coming in soon.
Oh, providing services during non-regular hours and days.
Yes. And I was putting in something very similar. I changed my office. I have two different office hours, one in the morning and one in the late evening. So that those are my office hours and you can find me during that time, just so that I can accommodate my working students.
Oh,
There we go.
I actually once had a group of boys that I needed to see regularly, and they were so busy through the day getting extra help classes. So I arranged for after school counseling for one group of students in 1 year.
And you see how some of them are so big. It's because someone may have liked it or added to it.
Yeah, more SEL. Yeah, reallocating resources. I think that's a real critical one. Sometimes we just do the same old, and it's not always working harder. It's working smarter. Just
And
adjust.
one of the things on the PowerPoint was, are we servicing our students in our program like in the middle, right? Like the mass. You know, and that was something that I could have spoken to as well. But how do we look at that and say, okay, what are we doing for our students in this portion and our students in this portion? And is our program providing those services?
Yeah.
I love the virtual check-in with parents.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
And the taxi vouchers, I didn't think about that. I love that.
Taxi vouchers. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, New York City, we give Metro cards, but that doesn't accommodate our families that really are struggling with taking the train and the bus, parents who can't make it, onto the train and the bus.
We provide food.
Voice is another good one, right? A way to reach parents and text parents if that's the way that
Yeah.
that they want to be communicated with, just another way.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it coming in. I'm going to lock these and go back to our program.
Lisa,
Great,
ask
here's some more.
SEL instead of per quarter.
I know. I do that always.
That is awesome.
Yes.
All right, Christy, take us on a brain break, please.
Y'all, these are my favorite things.
I just want to say uniform swap and new uniforms, making sure if kids need uniforms, we get them their uniforms. I just thank you, Orphelina.
Thanks.
Yes, I love that. I love that. All right, brain break. Remember,
ready?
make these up. I purchased these. And I have to put the plug to my colleagues, right? Because some of us do very creative things. So let's do it. You can put it in the chat. So if you have 3, you have 3. If you have 2, you have 2. If you have 1, you have 1. What is this thing? And we're gonna put it in the chat.
I really should have had Jeopardy music for this, shouldn't I?
Anyone want to take a guess? Is anyone looking it up? Friends? I like that one. Tabitha.
Oh, Friends, that was a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not right, but
Thank you,
Okay.
Tabitha.
Very true. I'm gonna get, now that I'm seeing some of these answers, I can see that it's a lot of the money. Yes. It's applicable, right? All of it is applicable.
Family.
Yeah.
Sophia, that's so smart if you have 1. Wow.
Yeah, I like
are
that.
we ready?
We're ready. An idea. So it's choices.
Choices.
Yes. So if you have 1 choice, you have 1 choice. If you have 2 choices, you have 2.
All right.
Nice.
I love it.
A little brain refresher.
Yes. Those are
Okay.
the
Our
components to forget.
third goal. How school counselors fit into the big picture. This is a really pretty critical point. I'd like to call your attention to a document, the Culturally Responsive Sustaining Education Framework, published by State Ed in 2018. There we go. And this document speaks to the complex system of biases and structural inequities at play that are deeply rooted in our country's history, culture, and institutions. This system of inequity must be understood, challenged, and transformed on every level. This framework is intended to help all education stakeholders create student-centered learning environments. This graphic from the framework illustrates the many stakeholders involved, and I just love that tree image to illustrate it. And it includes teachers, school leaders, district leaders, community members, students and parents, but also education department policymakers and higher education faculty. So this document, this framework was designed to be very large, very broad, but encompass all of those that have an influence on education in New York State. It sets forth 4 principles that are shown in each of the green circles. We're going to take a closer look at those to illustrate the 4 key principles. But we're going to look at how our school counselor role fits into this bigger picture. We may not be alone in this endeavor, but we are certainly vitally important. Overall, the framework aligns with ESSA and our need to recognize the effect of school environment on student academic performance and the need to improve school climates, to promote a relationship of trust and respect between schools and families, and recognize student achievement and school improvement as shared responsibilities. These sounding familiar? To provide opportunities for continued professional learning about equity, anti-bias, multicultural, and culturally sustaining pedagogies, and to support district and community critical conversations about a culturally responsive educational system. So the 4 principles of a culturally responsive educational system are a welcoming and affirming environment, high expectations and rigorous instruction, inclusive curriculum and assessment, and ongoing professional learning. So let's take a look at our role as a school counselor in each of these principles, while also recalling from some of our previous programs in Champ Camp to illustrate them. So we're going to start with the first principle, a welcoming and affirming environment.
Thanks, Gloria. I'm going to talk about the welcoming and and affirming environment. And as we are being culturally responsive, we all have to learn about our students' cultures and their communities. We need to create and sustain close relationships with families despite language barriers. I remember having a talk with my friend Christy about my ability to speak Spanish as I was without a translator for many years in my program, and I felt the need to learn how to speak Spanish. I took out my high school Spanish and I worked hard, and I am very proud of my proficiency to speak school language. I can speak with students and talk to them about expectations. I can speak to parents and talk to them about what we need. And I think it's important, even if you can't learn a language, I feel very grateful that I was able to do that. We have translators that help us as well. If you have a student who speaks Bengali and you can't speak the language and you rely on a translator, do not give your students over to the translator. Don't say, can you call so-and-so and let me know what they say? Be with the translator. Do it in person if you can. Let that family see your face and see your emotions. See how much you care. Because remember, language of care and face and posture is universal. This is how I connect to families when we have language barriers. And as we are also looking at the common SEL practices, this was from Why Social and Emotional Learning, and the Signature Practices Playbook is the best way to have a welcoming and affirming environment. I also want to give a little shout out to curriculum and how important it is to have diverse literature in schools. And this school year, myself and the reading teacher developed a Google document for all of our teachers, which included diverse children's picture book literature. She focused on the connection to curriculum, and I focused on the connection to character education. So all of our materials in the book room are being used for so many different purposes. So we have to stay connected to all cultures and make sure everyone feels welcome. Now, Christy, you want to talk about culture?
Absolutely. And, thank you for the segue, Lisa. I appreciate that. So when we look at culture, right, it can be identified in so many different ways. And it's a word that is really very generalized and it's thrown out there. So when you talk about culture, you could talk about working schedules. Culture is language. If you're in a hospital, culture talks about medical cures. And, if you have a culture taken, right, like a swab, that's considered a culture. Child rearing methods, that's the culture, to do this or to do that. Art, food, there's so many different ways to connect culture in your school environment and to connect to the culture of your families and your communities. So we need to be super mindful that when we're advocating for students and when we're connecting what's happening in our programs, that we are connected in every way possible that we can connect, so that it gives us the segue to creating a school climate, right? And I think with having said that, we can move into, we have our SEL practices, we have the school culture, and then we have school climate.
So climate, within these 4 principles, it really talks about a space where people can find themselves represented and reflected, and where they understand that all people are treated with respect and dignity. It's an environment that ensures that all cultural identities are affirmed and valued. So climate is how people feel, right? When you walk around your school, are all of your students represented in your posters, in your bulletin boards, in your signage? Is there a translator on your website? We've been talking about translators a lot. Has your district paid attention to the climate, and have they identified opportunities for growth? So when we talk about support and learning, social and civil learning, the teaching and learning pieces, do your teachers understand trauma sensitivity, Do they understand ACEs? Do they understand that being reflective is part of culture and climate? Your rules and your norms, are there any students that are being left out, or are there barriers because of them? Are we ensuring safety for all of our students in our buildings? Is there respect for diversity? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about climate. And in our next slide, this is one that really is just like an ask yourself. This is the way that we say that we get things done, right? In school climate and culture. We have goals, we have structure, we have policies and procedures, but really the way that we really get things done are addressing these beliefs and assumptions and perceptions and attitudes and having the courage to have really tough conversations. So we wanted to make sure that you understood that piece of it.
Second principle of a culturally responsive sustaining education is high expectations and rigorous instruction. Christy, would you like to speak to this?
Sure, because it links us straight to what my passion is, right? And it's advocacy. It's always advocacy for families and for students and for communities, and making sure that we are inclusive and making sure that that we are able to sit at the tables that we need to sit at so that we can have our voice heard, and so that our families and our communities and our students, first and foremost, have their voices heard and have a level of representation, and know that we are going to support them in every which way that we possibly can, because we know we cannot be all things to all people, right? You've heard me say that all, pretty often. You can be all things to all people, but you pick that hill that you are just going to stand there and you're going to plant that flag and you're going to say, this is how I am going to advocate this time around. And then, it's going to build on other things. So advocacy leads to the higher expectations, the rigorous instructions, and making connections with like the ENL student, in terms of her being in a college class as opposed to having additional ENL supports. That's just one of many examples. No one is thinking about those things, not because they don't care, but because there are other things that are happening within administrations and within districts that those things are not necessarily the priority. That's where we come in when we need to advocate for our students. A part of this is we've shared this through making our efforts count, right? And identifying our needs when it comes to our school building, knowing that we have to consistently review our data, regardless of what the data is, whether it's our personal data, our signature book. How many times has a student walked into our class, or how many times or into our office? How many times has a student texted you or G-chatted you or reached out to you, in comparison to other students? And why? What are the services that you're providing to these students, and how are you documenting that data? And then within that, you figure out the inequalities. I've never connected with these 5 students, yet they're super, super successful, or they're not super successful, and figuring out how do you support them in the ways that they need to be supported. Some examples, very common: school attendance, disciplinary problems, and academic performance. Those are the glaring ones. Those are the ones that kind of like, you see it in all the data. Students are not showing up. Students are not participating. Students are not engaged. But there's so many little interest in, well, that's not the word, right? So there's so many other little things that you can look at that that can help you support students and allow you to advocate for them.
Christy, I think what you're saying is we have our finger on the pulse. Our boots are on the ground and we know what's happening. And so here's another throwback to making your efforts count. You gain trust with your stakeholders, one intervention at a time. Every time you help a student, other students will know that you are an agent of good. Every time you help a teacher, the faculty will see you are a team player. Every time you help a parent, the community will speak to your willingness. And every time you help administration, they understand your worth. I believe this with all of my heart. And I had a student who was quite naughty and quite willful, and had a teacher who thought, I'm going to put him in his place. And throughout the school year, I went to bat for this kid very close with the parent, very close with the teacher. And we built a nice relationship because he knew I was advocating for his son. And one day during Meet the Teacher, I was walking in the hallway and the father came up. I said, "Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you." And he said, "I have a question for you. I have a daughter at home. She attends the BOCES program. She's in a wheelchair. She has medical needs. And they said she can't come to district because you guys couldn't handle it. I would like her to be in district." And I thought, well, why not? Here is a challenge. And I planted my feet and I did the research. And we were able to bring this girl, got the medical needs she needed, got her back in school, and she did beautifully. She had academic rigor. She had peers that she could relate to. It was such a beautiful success story. So you never know who's watching you, and you'll never know the trust people have in you until they walk up and say, "Hey, can you help?" And of course we will. So questions and feedback.
Thing in the chat room that we may have missed, or?
No, but someone helped me find my
Interesting.
word, so I appreciate that. Intrinsic.
Intrinsic, yes.
I appreciate that. Bridget has a question. You can unmute, Bridget, if you have a question.
No, not a question. I just wanted to comment on the previous slide about the 4 points. And that last point to me, I mean, they're all important and I've experienced all of them, but the last one is, I have to say there was, we had a new principal who of course didn't know me. And it took a long time for me to build that rapport and him understand the role that I play in the school and trying to make his life easier. And so when he finally came to that realization and understood my worth, he valued my opinions. And I felt like we had a partnership rather than a top-down type of relationship. And I so appreciated that. So.
And there you go. You are a stronger advocate for that. Way to go to stick in there and really show your worth, because sometimes administration may not be welcoming you with open arms. I've been down that road, and it's important to just keep at it. Bridget, that's wonderful.
Yeah, the principal school council relationship is key, and in fact is a great topic for a program like this. Any other questions?
Christy, I was thinking about when you were talking about curriculum and the student learner in themselves, like considering the different ways that students learn when you're advocating, right? For them to have rigor, you know, not some students are auditory learners, some students are visual learners. That doesn't mean that they can't learn the full content, right? So making sure that we're paying attention to that in our advocating too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you for your questions. And Bridget, thank you for sharing.
All right, moving ahead then. Of course, if you have questions ongoing, you can put them in the chat and we'll add them in. So the third principle of a culturally responsive, sustaining education is inclusive curriculum and assessment. And Kristen, I wonder if you want to address that.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite, right? So we're speaking to the importance of opportunities to learn about perspectives other than our own, right? So everyone's voice is heard. And how do we do that in our programs? Does your program invite that kind of inclusivity? Do your lessons, how do you disseminate information from your program? And so if we just take a step back and look at how your comprehensive program I want you to look at it through a diversity lens. How do you incorporate those current events into your instruction? How do you differentiate your instruction? How are you thinking about making sure that whatever's going on in the world, students have an opportunity to speak about it, right? But when we're talking about our program in general, Gloria, if you can just change that slide for me. We're talking about looking at tools, right? And we go back to data, action planning, we go back to our advisory council, we go back to climate and culture that we just talked about, and curriculum. So I would, in the most probably the most genuine way that we would do these things is really taking a look at your advisory council. And we talked about that in our last session, where your advisory council can really help you to look at your data, your program through a lens of diversity, of inclusion, and of access. Let this team that you work with help you to do that, not only from your counseling department in your building, but in other buildings as well. Really important. Using the MTSS, our tiered systems of support, to help us identify what we're doing at the tier 1 level. And that's really when we were talking about, do you remember that when we discussed the MTSS approach and how it looks with data and practices and systems when we're revising our program, right? So tier 1, are we hitting every single student? Are we being culturally relevant and responsive? Are we understanding our stakeholders from an equity and access point of view? Do we access everyone at the tier 1 level? Are we making sure that every student in a special needs class is also getting our program? Our ERLs, all of our students, do we differentiate? And then what's the makeup of our students receiving tier 2 and tier 3 services? Is there disproportionality from group to group when we are taking a look at our data? So Gloria, I guess that piece was all about just looking at your data and making sure that you're meeting the needs of every student. When you're delivering your program, are you paying attention to all students with equity?
And for those of you who maybe don't have a full-fledged program yet, be mindful that this system exists. So when we talk about starting small and growing big, start at your tier 1. And then make sure that the services that you want to provide for your students are there. And then work your way up, or go from tier 1 and make sure that you're supporting the ones that need to be in tier 3, and then work your way down to tier 2. Don't try to do it all at once. It doesn't work that way. You have to build, because you have to make adjustments. So something is not going to work all of the time. You have new sets of 9th graders that come in all of the time. You have to build on what you have. So when you have a foundation, you can make adjustments, right? You can rearrange the walls. You can change the lighting. You can do, those are just examples. You can do all of those things when you have your house built. But you have to start with something and work your way up to that. So remember, start small and grow big.
Pick one thing to take a look at and then grow from there. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I wanted to add another state ed reference here that came out, I think, in 2019. Equitable course access guidance and 5 guiding principles that drive that. This is also a document that's in the files for you, but it'll sound familiar again. State ed saying, provide a course sequence and foundation building in earlier grades. Start younger in providing those gateway opportunities for kids. Create multiple access points. So when you're looking for what can you do when you've identified an issue, this is some guidance to tell you where to look. So if you have like math criteria, well, maybe there needs to be another way for a student to enter. Like Kristen was saying, people learn different ways. How would a visual learner approach that class, and how might they demonstrate their intelligence to be able to have access? Use only enrollment access criteria that's educationally necessary, and not things that, well, as we all know, were designed years ago and without even maybe us knowing anymore why, or for perhaps not a valid reason. Offering a robust set of student supports. This is something that we're always harping on, not just school counselors, but we need school psychologists and social workers. We need mental health counselors in schools. We need all of these services, and state ed is behind that. And here again is that idea of publishing materials in multiple languages. So this document, sometimes it helps to have state ed behind you when you're looking to get changes in policy, or looking to even just call attention to policies that you're finding the data shows is not being fair to the kids in your cohort. So let that document help you with all of that. Whoa, time for another brain break. Hey, Christy, you're our brain breaker.
Yes, I was muted. I got all excited. was on
I
mute.
just want to chat in from the chat. We had from our own Dr. Rotunda, school counselors should be opportunity makers, not gatekeepers. We should be opening the doors.
Yeah.
I love that translation. Absolutely. So our next brain break. And again, let's do this. So you have a huge pail that when it's filled to the top with water weighs 100 pounds. What can you add to the pail or to the bucket to make it lighter? We did this in practice.
Bum, 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 bum.
Come on. Let's,
Oh, heat. That would work. Air.
okay. They have the best answers. I'm like, that's so
That's so great.
Smart.
yeah,
Smart. Yeah.
love it.
Oh, Hope. I love that.
They're like, please get lighter. I hope you
You
get
know, we need to remember there's more than one answer for things too. That's a
Yeah.
great reminder. Are we ready for the answer yet? Did anybody guess it?
They
Yeah.
did several.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
And the answer is correct. It's a hole.
Oh,
I
all
love
right.
the humor. I needed that one. That was so funny.
I didn't get this one at first. I guess I wasn't being visual enough. So
Yes,
that's a new one now.
right?
All right, so now the fourth and final principle of a culturally responsive sustaining education is ongoing professional learning and support. And Christy, I'm going to ask if you can speak to that.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm gonna put it out there because I do it all the time, and I know that folks do not all have or can make the same kind of time and dedicate to professional development. And it's difficult, right? Finding the time when you have life that's happening. But this is an amazing, amazing opportunity where you are right now. You're here with us and you're doing it now. And this is professional development. And there's so many different ways that you can be a part of professional development. One of the ways, and I don't know if I bring this up now or I bring this up later, but one of the ways in terms of like, we have the state level, we have the regional level, we have the district level, we have things as simple as YouTube, and we have things as simple as TED Talks. And we have all of those things that provide professional development. We have, you know, starting small, planting those seeds, and then growing big. And we know that all these things are available. Podcasts are professional development. TED Talks, as I mentioned, YouTube. I learned so many things on YouTube. I can't believe how many things I fixed in my house from TikTok. You know, like there's just so many different ways to really develop ourselves. And it's not always a conference, but that's another way to network and connect with people and put the name to the face and their resources. Because sometimes when you see someone and they're presenting on something, you can make that instant connection with them, and they're happy to share their resources.
Yeah,
So
I think it's important to remember that it starts close in your school or community with community-based or school-based workshops, and then expands out through your district, your county, your BOCES area, your region, your state. Not just our state, but other states as well have programs. And then national, and then I love that you brought up, Christy, that you brought up TED Talks and YouTube. I should have put TikTok in there too. There's the global resources. It really is, there's so much available. There's such a richness. But to get a little bit more specific, this is something, Christy, you can speak to for New York City.
And I know that this is, you know, this happens across New York State, but just for my New York City folks, if you are connected and you have a DOE email, you can go onto the school resources, counselor resources on InfoHub. And there's a wealth of information on here that has not been developed behind the scenes by people who are not connected. These are resources that we have provided as school counselors across New York City have provided information on, and they have professionals. And you can click on these links and it brings you to academic planning. It brings you to information on autism. It brings you to information on child abuse and where you can take your workshop and get certified, additional services if you need that. So I encourage you, for all of my New York City folks, if you're not using InfoHub, connect to it so that way you can have your own New York City wealth of resources, in addition to resources that you can get elsewhere.
Yeah, so you might not know, but a place like NISCA has on our website, we have a calendar of events. So there wasn't just this program and the previous Champ Camp program. There are 3 other programs going on this month. Did you want to add something, Kristen?
Yeah, I guess our rural folks, BOCES is a big component of how we receive our professional development, but I would encourage you to be on your professional development committees at your school. So when you recognize that there's a need, like Lisa, when you started doing those just in-house PDs, once you recognize it in your school, then you begin to look for those types of things that you can offer for your colleagues, but that your colleagues can offer for you as well. So not only your local BOCES, but regionally BOCES. My learning plan for many of our schools has a wealth of PD. So definitely be involved in not only participating in professional development, but being part of the people who plan it.
Yeah.
And just to add to what Kristen is saying, in addition to being a part of the people who plan it, so try to incorporate yourself in it, right? You want to be one of those people at the table because you want to be able to advocate and you want people to see what you have to offer. So ask for those additional 10 minutes and say, listen, can I speak for 10 minutes? Let me share what we're doing in our school counseling program, or let me share some highlights. These are the 5 things we've done in the last month, or the 1 thing that we've done in the last month. Be a part of the PD if you can.
I'd be remiss to not bring up the NISCA conference this fall, November 4th through 6th at Turning Stone. It's a statewide opportunity, and every state has these conferences. I'm a big believer in going to other places. I used to like to go to like the school psychologist conference as well and learn from a different perspective. And of course, there's programs like Champ Camp, and I know Bob's going to tell you about Ramp Camp that's coming up. And then there's this national level, ASCA's conference is going to be in Las Vegas this July, and it's in person. They also have a calendar that you can go to and just see what's going on. There's a long list of webinars that are available right now. And of course, that some of that does require ASCA membership, but that's part of your professional responsibility, is to be connected with your professional associations. Christy, you want to add?
Yeah, Gloria, before you move on, just for my New York City folks, I can't speak for the rest of the state or upstate, but New York City, your admins, they have money. So request to go this year, request it, okay? They have money, we got money. So they need to spend it somehow. So put it in. If you never thought, there are principals and administrators that will pay for you to go to ASCA, especially if you've never gone before. Take advantage of this opportunity and see if they'll pay for it. You don't lose anything by asking. They'll cover your airfare. They'll cover, even if they just cover your conference. But be mindful of that. We have money, not a lot.
I can't say enough for national conferences. I think it's where I learned most of what I know, is hearing what people in other states were doing. It just kind of shakes you out of your comfort zone and just opens up your thinking in ways that kind of, in New York, we do our New York thing. Well, it's really interesting how they do things in Texas and Colorado. Yes, even Texas and Colorado and Florida and Georgia. There is like incredible stuff going on, and they've worked it all through. They're really ahead of us in some ways. So you can benefit from all of their great work. I love it. It's like an intense 3 days of learning, but I come back with so much.
But they've also incorporated some online learning as well at the conference. So you can be at the conference and still be at your own home. So
yeah, I think that's one of the real benefits that's going to come out of COVID. There's so much online now that you can just do from your office, from your home. And I don't think that's going to go away. Certainly NISCA has put so much into the online learning, and I think it's paid off. So it couldn't be more convenient than now. Uh,
Love this slide. You and I loved this slide. So we used it again.
Yes, yes, yes. So we know in professional development, you can get it in your data. You can get professional development for action planning, for lesson planning, trauma-informed practices, climate and culture and surveys, curriculum. Whatever you need to know, trust me, there is a PD. Whatever you're questioning, someone has done it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to necessarily fly during COVID to a conference. You know, it exists. You can do ASCA virtually. They do it virtually for the last couple of years. They've also offered that component. So that's an option for you. You can have your administrators pay for that if you don't want to go in person. So take advantage of every opportunity that you can get a hold of to be able to support yourself and build yourself and educate yourself so that way you can better support your students, your families, and your communities.
Yeah, especially as you've been listening to us today, you were thinking, wow, they make it sound so easy. I wouldn't know how to do that. That's the perfect reason for going. But if you need more reasons for professional development, here are a few we thought of.
I also want to encourage people not just to look for a conference to go to. If you are interested, go and see what inspires you. There is so much that we can learn from just going and listening and being inspired.
More poll.
And we'd like to hear from you. This will help inform. What professional development topic are you interested in learning more about? So please take a minute to give us some topics.
Janice, the NISCA conference is in person this year. Hopefully, our fingers are crossed. We're planning.
I want to meet everyone in person. Hey, I saw you on Champ Camp. I can't wait to connect names to people.
Okay. Marcia says mental health. Tracy put in counselor principal relationships.
Yeah.
The chat. Grant,
yeah.
Writing.
grant writing. I did it for so many years. I don't know that I have the energy, but yes, I can
But
probably
you can teach it. Avoidance.
Yes.
Students who have avoidance, yes.
Mhm.
Conducting counseling sessions. Oh, Tabitha, I would love to teach that one.
Positivity. That was a good one.
Yes.
Yeah.
How to fix a toxic environment.
Wow, that's awesome.
Current climate.
One of my favorite sayings is you can live with the devil and not be the devil yourself. Don't forget that.
Mhm.
Working with teachers to improve climate.
Yes.
Turnkey.
Was avoidance, school avoidance? I'm just
Cool.
trying
I would
to,
think
school
with
avoidance?
students avoiding.
Okay.
Student engagement.
Yes.
Counseling students. Yeah, the basics.
That getting your other staff to understand the depth of your role,
Yes.
really standing up for who you are and what your role is in the school takes such strength and voice.
Yes.
Some.
I'm not sure about your schools, but I know that we're already planning for next year, and we're looking at our calendars and PDs and all of those things. And I'm trying to figure out where, you know, I'm dipping my foot and how I can be present and be able to share information and support, so that the PDs are always just teacher focused. I want to make sure that we're throwing some SEL in there, and we have some engagement, and we're, you know, creating teams.
Jennifer, I love you're looking out for the transgender students.
Yeah.
Collecting data. It's another good one.
Buy-ins to the school community. Love that. SCL curriculum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome.
All right, I'm going to lock.
Excellent.
Progress monitoring. Yeah, the IEP goals. Oh, I know I have to do those.
It's a good one. Definitely.
Well, we hope we've inspired
Oh, yeah.
some innovation and some courage.
I would just like to say, It is time to buckle up and feel the inspiration of what we have been talking about. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." If we are to be the best advocates and counselors and opportunity makers, it takes courage. And I always say, time to put on my big girl pants and get the job done. Taking a deep breath, jumping in is a big commitment to yourself and to your professionalism. And we hope so much that we inspire you to start small and grow big.
We would like to hear what you may be inspired to do, what's lifted you up. This is truly our last poll for the Champ Camp series. Before we talk about resources and next steps.
Yes.
Oh, that was a good one. This last one that Grace said, how to write the social emotional section of an IEP.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really
Observable traits, yeah.
Just to share, Grace, that was a YouTube video for me when I first started doing IEP goals. And then I created a Google folder of all of these social emotional like words, like just like all these things that made sense. And then as I was, reflecting on the student and meeting with the student and getting to know the student, I thought about like, does this fit in there and that fit in? I didn't try to fit the student into a box, but I couldn't find the words in writing them. That's where I really, really struggled. And that's where I found my support, interesting enough, with my colleagues as well. But, sometimes when people do this for a long time, they're like, oh yeah, you just say this and you just say that. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't have those words, but that's what worked for me.
Christy, they want you to share that with them, what you were just talking about. Where did you find it?
Just YouTube. How do I write IEP goals? Social emotional stuff. Just a search.
Oh, these are great.
Oh, get back into
These are
classrooms
really great.
regularly. Awesome.
Then you go down that rabbit hole. It's just like you click on one video, then you click on another video, and then it keeps recycling videos, and then it keeps coming up.
Oh, I love number one, be a better advocate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not just for your students, also for yourself.
Yeah.
intentionality. That's another really good one.
Purposeful, so important, right? Make your efforts count. Make sure that's just like, all right, I'm going all in on this. Make sure it's worth it.
Kristen, be involved in the PD committee. You did that one. Go, go.
Yeah. Be more vocal. Teamwork, great. Yeah. Educating administration on our role. Super.
Yes.
Well, that's great.
Planning. I love it.
Start small and grow big.
Yes. Don't be afraid and just know it's going to take time. It's going to take time. But you have that one thing that you're going to master, and then you can build on that.
Yeah.
Be on the lookout for gaps that sometimes we miss. That one's a great one. I mean, if
Yes.
that's the one thing that you walked away with, that would definitely be one of them.
I love improving the school culture. Everybody needs to start looking at all the diversity and how we are addressing and connecting everyone.
Richelle, I hope I said your name correctly, but that is such a great point. Sometimes it's not just learning new things in PD, but the reminders and inspiration from our colleagues. Oh, thank you that we did a great job, but I love reminders, and we try to connect again and again. I hope that you saw the connections between the workshops and that you saw that we tried to kind of like repeat things because we were passionate about them, and we believe in them and we practice them. These are the things that we are doing. So I know that for me, I need those reminders like, oh yeah, the small, start small and grow big. That's important to me because sometimes you just want to do it all and you can't. You just can't. So thank you for sharing that.
So these are some of the resources that you'll find in the Google folder. It's also, there's links at the end of the PowerPoint, and we always put a PDF of the PowerPoint in that folder so you can revisit any of the slides that you might want to. But ultimately, we wanted to thank you all for joining us. And those who attended all 5 sessions, you're going to receive a complimentary copy of the Ask a National Model. If you believe you qualify, especially if you attended any by telephone, because we might not connect your phone number with your email address and know that you attended all 4. So if there's any question or you just want to confirm, just send an email to Gloria Jean at NYSCA. Make sure you spell NYSCA right, NYSSCA.org. And I will confirm that you qualify and make sure we get that out to you. So one last time, here's where you find all of the materials for all of the Champ Camp programs. Those attendees today are going to get a certificate of attendance. We can provide CTLEs if you need them. And we send a really little brief feedback form that many of you have taken the time to fill out for us. And it's very helpful in letting us know how we've been doing and what else we might do to make things better or just to do next. This program is recorded, so you can tell your colleagues about it, tell other folks about it, and they can view them. I just told an intern today who needed some professional development hours. I said, go on the NYSCA YouTube channel. You can watch 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 hours of professional development that can count towards your internship and learn a lot about what's going on in our world today. So spread the word. Thank you all for your attendance, for your attention. Thank you especially to the team that put all of these together. It's been a great group. If this is something you might want to do in the future, let Bob Rotunda, our executive director at NYSCA.org, let him know that you have an interest in being involved with professional development. We're always looking for people to help organize programs, to be the voice from the field, and other roles. So this would be a way to get involved if that was your inspiration to get more involved. We'd be happy to have you involved. So
Yes,
thank you all, everybody.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Oh, I'm going to cry. It's our last one.
Our last one. Thank you all. We appreciate you for being here.
Thank you.
I forgot. Turn it over to Bob. I've only done it 4 times before.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank Gloria, Kristen, Christy, Lisa, Maisie for all your great work on Champ Camp 2.0. Very well done. Nicely done. And as Gloria mentioned, we've got a bunch of stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks, including tomorrow we have the suicide prevention from the Samaritan Foundation.
Yes.
There were a couple hundred people signed up for that already. And I spoke to them a little earlier. Warning signs of Alzheimer's is next week. This one looks interesting. April 29th, 2 guys walk into a school, 1 black, 1 white, field notes from the front lines. It's a webinar we saw at another conference, and we twisted some arms, and the two gentlemen are going to do it for us on the 29th, open to everybody. And as Gloria mentioned, we're going to be doing a ramp camp. Although we're not camping, we're doing it online. It's May 6th. It's 3 consecutive Thursdays. You only have to register once for that. The flyer will be coming out in an email in a couple of days. It's an opportunity to check out Ramp Camp if you don't know much about it, about the Ramp program. Those of you that are, making your way toward being compliant with New York State regs are getting real close to being able to ramp your school. So RAMP means Recognize, Ask a Model Program. So check it out. That's coming up, and just stay tuned there's stuff that comes up every day. We'd like to thank you again, the Professional Development Committee, which is this slide. On behalf of Dr. Gail Reed Barnett, I would like to thank you for joining us for the last however many weeks. And we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, if I forgot to say it, the chat will be in the Google Drive.
Yep.
The PDF will be it's already in the Google Drive. So I'll probably fix the mistakes I found and then put it in. My ABCs that became